It's always buy, me. Obviously, everyone will say, I want a better CPA, but realistically, we need data. You can't just come to us with no data. The first batch of content you send is going to show immediate impact. So we just kind of said, we'll figure it out. And they bought in. You got to answer through these crazy dreams. And it's hard to say no. Some of the path it's not pretty. It's not glamorous.
Hey everyone, it's Viktor from Markademics, and I'm so happy to have you on the second episode of our second season of Two Ecomm Experts. And I'm so excited because today we're going to have a discussion that I think is going to be super valuable for every single ecom store owner, for everyone that's interested in creatives. And if you are doing creative testing, and you should be doing creative testing, but if you're into this, definitely watch this episode because I have a great expert, a Forbes 30 under 30 master of creatives who's part of the TikTok Creative Marketing Partnership Program, someone who has done it for so many big brands, has taught it to so many other people, and is the managing director of Sapphire Studios, Thomas Ma. Thomas, thank you for being part of our Two Ecomm Experts podcast.
Happy to be here. Excited to share some knowledge, and hopefully it helps those who are listening.
Absolutely. I'm sure that we're going to do that. And for the people that still don't know you, outside of all these glamorous things that I just shared about you, what should people know about Thomas Ma for the ones that still don't know you?
I think the one thing that people should know is I have a big desire to give back to others. And most recently, I just turned 30. So for my 30th birthday, I went to El Salvador, found a local organization, charity, and did a Make-A-Wish type of day for 30 kids. And that was really special because most of the kids have never experienced something that extraordinary. So at the beach house, we got food, surfing lessons, horseback riding, and we provided them great lunch, and it was just a great scene for all the kids where it brought smiles to their face. So that's what I want people to know who I am as a person outside of Sapphire Studios, the company.
And that's absolutely amazing. When you told me about all of this, it really made me happy. It made Ioana from my team, who is on the behind the scenes, so like all of us smiling because at the end of the day, we are business people. We do make money. We do change the lives of many people through our businesses. But when you can give back to others, that's really what it makes us happy at the end of the day. So we can actually talk about a little bit about that at the end of the podcast. But when it comes to creatives, how did you get started? How did you get started with creatives? Why are you so obsessed with creatives and that creative production in general? How did you got it into it?
It honestly started out of curiosity as a consumer
Mm-hmm.
because in college, I would follow many meme pages, and I was fascinated by the engagement of this account with no face. I saw there were influencers, but these accounts were getting more or the same amount of engagement as those big influencers. And that was my start into creative. I wanted to be in the field because I reached out to those page owners and I would ask them for advice. The advice that they gave me helped me a lot with understanding content, where I would go to networking events and I would meet other brand owners who wanted more traffic for their brand. And I said, you know what? You should try promoting on these pages. It's getting great reach. Instead of them listening to my advice, they said, you know what? We want to hire you on a test campaign. I said, okay, sure. Why not? Did it, did well, got some case studies, and then eventually just kept snowballing into something much bigger. And today, as you know, Sapphire Studios, we are one of the largest creators of UGC content in the ecosystem. But it really started with that just first initial curiosity and the clients who said yes in the early days.
When did you start creating user generated content for the first time? Like what year was that?
Probably during COVID,
Okay.
2020, 2021. The reason for this was I saw an angle where you can make content that didn't seem ad like for brands, because when you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about selling a product, everything's just so ad like. It's always buy, 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 me, and it's not much of like the authenticity. And I saw that
Hmm.
UGC offered that authenticity, and I said, I just need test clients to start with me. And if I were able to get those test clients, then that would have led to something. I didn't know we would get to this level that we are at today. I mean,
Hmm.
no idea, because it just seemed like far fetched dream. Like we work with the Amazons of the world, the Walmarts, Dyson, any brand you see on TikTok now. Our team has played a role in their TikTok creative at this point in 2 years. So like 250 brands, various industries, products. It's very humbling and very grateful to be in this position.
Amazing. And I wanted to ask you this because me myself as a digital marketer, as an e-com store owner, and the people that are watching or listening to our podcast, they're typically 7 and 8 figure e-com store owners. And I don't know a brand that's like a 7 or 8 figure brand that doesn't run user generated content. So it has turned into something like a basic right now for it's like a fundamental thing to have in your ad account. So how has the consumer behavior changed towards user generated content? What was it like 2020, 2021, and now? What's the difference?
Back then, UGC was seen as something not innovative. People were very skeptical. I
Hmm.
remember reaching out to brands. They would say, "Oh, this is not on brand. This looks totally inauthentic. We don't like it." So it took some convincing to do, and the convincing was, "Hey, we'll make some free content, no charge, but if it works, we'd like to engage with you guys in the future." And that's really what made it work. Those early brands that said yes had the results that got other brands to want to try UGC, kind of like a snowball effect. I mean, like everything you launch, the early adapters benefit the most. And eventually, when the case studies are there, you're like, oh, I mean, I like it. Because then, it's revenue based business, right? Like
Yeah.
everybody wants to make revenue for their company at the end of the day. That's what keeps us afloat and growing.
But do you make the same revenue as, let's say, when you were early adopter, when you were using UGC? I remember when we were using UGC and we were like one of the early adopters of it. We were making so much money out of it. And nowadays, it's not just about, hey, I have a UGC, then it works. What has changed? And how can you actually make a UGC work nowadays?
I think now data is the key solution. What's changed now is my company has over hundreds of data points of what has worked, what hasn't worked, and we've seen ad creatives that totally crush it for specific industries because
Hmm.
everyone sees UGC. It's like, why not just go out and hire somebody, pay them like, $100 or something, and they make UGC. I mean, that's great if it works, awesome. But when you're scaling these ads to over six figure plus on a monthly basis, it helps to work with somebody who really is really good at analyzing the data and making those post production edits.
Hmm. What type of data and KPIs are you looking at as a company?
Cost per acquisition, return on ad spend. Those are the two things that people care about, or cost per subscription.
Sure, but isn't there like something that, let's say, isn't like a hook rate that you're looking at? Like, what are the good traits of a UGC in terms of data?
Yeah, definitely thumb stop ratio. That's when, if you don't know, you're scrolling up and down your phone. If
Mhm.
your thumb stops, that's a good sign. People like to see why that's the case because your
Mhm.
ads need to be seen. If it's not seen, then may as well not
What is
even be
like a
there.
good thumb stop ratio that you have, let's say, or it really depends on the
I,
industry?
I don't want to give an exact number because it really varies per industry. Like you could have a really low thumb stop ratio, but your ad could be highly converting.
Hmm.
Because ads, there's pricing points. Obviously, if you're selling like a mattress versus a drink like this right here,
Yep.
this drink is much cheaper and it's gonna have a higher thumb stop ratio. Whereas if you're selling a mattress, people know like they see the mattress, they may not stop as much, but you got to inform those potential customers the why, and you usually got to explain a lot more for the premium products.
Okay. When, because I, like I suggest that you have many processes inside of your company. So you take on a new client, you start working with them. What are the first things that you're looking at before creating content for them? What's
Mm,
important to know before getting into UGC?
their ad library. What have they done in the past? How much have they spent? Who have they worked with? What are they looking for? What is their targeted CPA goal? Obviously, everyone will say, I want a better CPA. But realistically, it's who's on the team. How are you reviewing these data points? And who have you worked with? Because if you want us to go in, we can't fix something right away. It takes time. So we have to learn about as much as we can so that when we strategize, we study what has worked for your team or the client's team,
Hmm.
and we make new ideation based on the previous track record. And then we have our own data points on a month to month basis.
Yeah, like for example, are you really like what would you suggest to a brand when you start working with them to go really hard and get many like creators to work with, or you're like, okay, let's get it slowly, but like what's your typical plan when you start working with someone?
Well, they could reuse their UGC from typical customers who post organically, but we're more on the paid side.
Hmm.
So when you're working on the paid side, we need data. You can't just come to us with no data and no insights because we just need this to make new ideas. So that's what we study. We study the cost per acquisition. We look at the types of creative. We write down like, oh, okay, this is the type of hook that they're using in their key selling point. Key selling point is typically the promo. There
Hmm.
always needs to be a promo when making an ad. Otherwise, they could just go to the website and buy it. You need a scarcity tactic that gets people to stop and say, "Oh, let me put in my credit card. Let me go on that Apple Pay and just put my thumb in."
Okay, so you want to have a promo in your UGC and you want to have scarcity elements. Do you put them inside of the UGC or you have them on the website only?
Try both. I mean,
Okay.
never never stick to there's no formula for marketing in my opinion. You just got to see what works for you and you ideate from that test.
I'm an agency owner, and I very regularly, when I go to a new, let's say, Facebook ad account, as someone who's testing a lot, doing lots of stuff, I am seeing so many different mistakes from people before me. And the bigger the brand, the bigger the mistakes that typically they've made. What are like the biggest misconceptions when working with UGCs that your clients have faced in the past?
I mean, kind of like you said, I mean, my biggest learnings is they always want immediate results where you snap your finger and the first batch of content you send is going to show immediate impact. And the other thing is just some brands have strict guidelines and they're disappointed when we send in the videos, but it's their idea. And then they say, oh, this company, they're not great. Um, I guess the key thing is just let the experts do what they're good at as long as they abide by the guidelines, of course, and give them time and room to, you know, get the results.
Okay, quite interesting in that regard. Um, do you have something like, let's say, a story or something like a case of a client that was like really revolutionizing in terms of like the way that you thought about your business or user generated that really changed their lives, or let's say you as a company?
Yeah, I mean, I point back to those early day clients because those case studies helped us get into the TikTok program. Prior to the TikTok program, we've never worked with a large Fortune 500 that you would
Hmm.
see on Facebook, Snapchat, or TikTok. Uh, those clients gave us the early lights, the early trial to figure out our scripting, our creator, our post production edits, and how do we work just in general for a campaign, a sprint.
Interesting. And since you said that you're working with like the Fortune 500 companies and so on, I'm really interested. If I'm a 7 or 8 figure ecom brand and I want to work with a company that specializes in UGC, maybe it's yours, maybe it's someone else. What should I be looking for when I'm researching a company like yours? What should I be looking for in that?
Track record, seeing what types of content the company has make or what ideas they have for making better results for the brand.
Mhm.
Because if you're on the brand side, you need to convert. You got to pick the company that suits you, and whether it's a company that is experienced like us or you find a fresh company like we were 2 years ago. There's
Mhm.
pros and cons to both, right? But what I will say is the company where we were 2 years ago, it would have been really difficult to get the brands we have today because of the lack of experience we didn't have. But for us, we just kind of said we'll figure it out, and they bought in. I'm not so sure people would be as accepting now when there's more choices. Back then, there
Yeah,
were less choices for UGC content, so it's like, yeah, sure, go figure it out. Like, whatever.
we're open for that. Like, what are the general misconceptions, except for like track record that you obviously like case studies that you want to have? What's like a good trait? Like, for example, when you work with a company, what's like the team on a project? What type of people do you put on a project?
Data driven. Are you speaking about the client side or like my side as
Your
the
side,
owner?
like what type of people do you have on a project? Let's say that I'm working with you. I have a 7 figure ecom brand. I'm working with you. What type of people should I be expecting to work with on your site?
Oh, you just work with our account manager. They are your point of
Mhm.
contact. You don't engage with anyone else from our team. The
Okay.
account manager is there to guide you each campaign, and they are the ones who will explain the data breakdown and set the meetings with your team.
Hmm. Well, but on your backside, who's working on what? Like, how many people do you have per
Yeah,
project or stuff like that? Or that's like,
lot more than you think. So there's our creators, our creative
okay.
talent management team, our creative strategists, which are the ones that are writing the scripts, uh, the editors, of course, the account manager and creative strategist in the end who QC the quality of the video. So at least 5+ people touch a campaign at minimum.
Wow. Okay. So maybe
Yeah.
that's like the bigger difference that I would say when you're working with someone that's like new, or let's say that maybe it's a little bit cheaper, you're probably getting 1 to 2 people max working on a
And that's
project.
okay. I mean, but I don't know if they have the data to go off of. We have a
Hmm.
team that's dedicated to training or researching our data to always give us like what's new and what's working.
How do you do your creative researches and trends? Like, how do you work on that? What do you do in order to get like the latest information to know what's working at the moment?
Well, the TikTok ad library inspiration does a great job of showing what's working. To be featured, you have to spend some good revenue to TikTok, and you need to have some winning results. Otherwise, your ad wouldn't be featured there.
Okay.
So I would start there,
Mm-hmm.
and you can segment by industry and different niches, and you can kind of pinpoint the ones that speak to you and your brand.
Okay. Quite interesting. In regards to, let's say that I'm an e-com store owner, and for the next 6 months, I've said that I can, let's say, put $20,000 in creatives and user-generated content, whatever. If you were me in that regard, where would you invest your money, and how would you pick how to spend it?
Who are you trying to reach?
Okay, so that's interesting. Let's say that I have a brand that is already successful. I have a client base that's only solely in the United States, and I am selling to a demographic that's between 30 and 55 that really likes a specific product. What do you do in that regard? And then let's say I have 20 to $30,000 to spend on
Well,
just creatives.
definitely start researching the hashtag that the product relates to and see what the demographic is responding to. And by responding, it's not just a like, it's just seeing the comments and seeing, okay, like what gets them to stop and comment. But two, look at similar products, study the customer testimonial, the good ones and the bad ones, and see what is the most common thing that they speak of, because these are your key selling points. And you're trying to reach to more people who are going to buy the product. Once you have those data points, you can start to script and come up with ideas and inspiration based on what works. And that's why I was saying use the TikTok ad library to see like what works after you do the research on what are the people saying. And then you kind of have like a starting point of like, hey, here's what works for other brands. You're ready to take flight and run, if you have a $20,000-$30,000 monthly budget, maybe make an ad group. Be like, hey, week one, I want to test $5,000 on 10 different creatives. Okay, let it run for 7 days. Okay, let's see the results. Okay, now you know what works, what doesn't work. The ones that work, you scale up and you make other iteration of those ad creatives and you start remixing stuff that seems interesting, even if the ads didn't perform. Maybe it was the hook that wasn't good. You just got to swap it.
Interesting. What in regards to like, because you really touched based on creative testing in that regard. What are your favorite formats that you're using for ads purposes? Let's say you want to run ads on Facebook and you have UGCs. What are your favorite formats for that?
Yeah, you got to have a hook that's very attention grabbing. Like, stop, look right here. Here's 5 ways you can save on your next XYZ. This deal is going immediately, and people are going crazy. Whatever. Um, so have a good hook. Two, for your body, just make sure you're transparent. If it's an online product, show the green screen. If it's an app, same thing. Show like what it really looks like. So you're not just buying like a dream, you're buying a reality that's true when you receive the product. And that's something you gotta be intentional about for anything that you market. Because look, a bad customer is gonna go crazy in a negative way. You don't want that.
Okay. And then what do you do after you do all of this? Like we have gathered so much inspiration from TikTok. We have created the hooks, the bodies. We've edited all of that, and we've started testing. What's next?
You run the ads. That's it. Like you start.
Okay, cool. In regards to you as a person, really got interested into like because you grew so much like in the past few years and just being so young, getting so much attention from like being named Forbes 30 under 30. Um, what was your main driver and force to become an entrepreneur in general?
It just really came down to the opportunity and my situation. My situation was I didn't have any jobs lined up after college. So I decided that I was going to make something on my own.
Hmm.
I did not know I was going to land in creative, but I was always stubborn and just relentless in my own failures. And even when it looked really, really bad and many people would just, sit down and just quit, I always said at some point, as long as it's fun, it'll work out. And that's the mentality that I carried in the early days where nobody trusted myself and my business partner. And now it's just surreal. Like I had that moment actually like a week ago while I was in El Salvador. I was like, wow, like what the heck? This is incredible to live this dream where I made something from scratch that had no path. It was
Hmm.
daunting, scary, but now everyone says, "Oh, it's a good idea." But back then, it's like, "Hey, like he works hard." But what does that mean?
What was like your biggest uh, maybe failure that you had to encounter in your path?
there were just so many failures to count, but they were part of the roadblocks.
Hmm.
A failure was going into a pitch meeting with a client and getting a answer that's totally not what I was looking for. And I flew all the way out to Los Angeles from Chicago. And this is from like a movie. This is for a movie studio. We were trying to pitch emoji apps to a certain brand. We showed up. We even bought popcorn from Chicago, and we're like, okay, cool. Like we put in this like personal touch. They'll like it or whatever. But the whole time, the guy was just on his phone, totally disrespectful. Nothing happened, and we basically spent like 1 to 2K just for this meeting. But to him at the time, we were just like smart kids, I guess. So that was really discouraging to have that moment. But I just remember like sitting there outside the park that I'll remember this feeling, and I'm gonna make sure that this doesn't happen again. And honestly, that was like one of the last big failures I can think of. Yeah, it was a learning moment.
What did you take as steps in order for you not to have any such failures in the future as well?
Same thing. Just get back up. Don't cry. Don't sit there. Don't pout. You just, no one's gonna grab your hand and hold your hand to what you want to achieve. Like
Hmm.
you're just gonna have to write your own path and go through the nails that you may have to walk through. Like some of the path was not, it's not pretty. It's not glamorous. There's days behind the scene that no one sees when you're up late at night, just cold outreaching, learning, watching YouTube, or where your family's like, "What are you doing?" You say, "Yeah, I don't know."
I'm
Like
working.
the day where you don't make money, like it's rough.
Quite interesting in that regard, because you're in the service business. I'm in the service business, and honestly, e-commerce in general, we are all service businesses, but in another way, and we all have to work with all kinds of other companies in order for us to make it happen. And you showed a very clear example, something that I've been facing for years, where you're preparing like crazy for a client. You spend so much money just to meet them, or like just, or you spend so much time to prepare for that meeting, which is like money on the table that you didn't spend on something else that was driving you cash. Um, how do you prepare for a meeting with some of those bigger brands, knowing that many times they're like completely on another page, that maybe you have a 30 or 50 or even more higher percent chance that you're just wasting your time there? How do you prepare for that so that you minimize that percentage?
I guess a clarifying question I have for you is: are you asking this when I was starting out, or are you asking in present day with the
I'll
track
be
record and
interested to know
everything?
what's the difference between when you got started out and what's happening now.
Well, now we have experience, we have a track record, we have referrals, word of mouth, big brands that we could just say we worked with, and we have actually worked with great track records. So those meetings are much easier because they need us. And I just straight up say, look, if you want to convert, I mean, this is our track record. If it doesn't interest you, then you're free to work with somebody else, because they always say what makes us special. And that's what I say. We have all these clients coming for a reason. It's not because they, you know, it's not because they're just coming because we're bad or anything like that. So we just have the process. So I'll cap present day company there. Earlier days, man, you just need to find the first few case studies with proof that you can deliver. You got to answer those tough questions, such as, oh, the creator I'm looking for is XYZ. I want them out in the forest and I want them to do like a campfire. You got to answer through these crazy dreams. And it's hard to say no, because when you don't have the revenue, you just got to say yes and figure it out, because that's what gets you through. The yes will lead to referrals. Referrals are the number one key channel for growth.
Do you still do outreach to grow your business?
Mm, me personally,
No,
it's just
probably you're not doing outreach like but you as a company, let's say.
uh it's mostly referral based. I mean, I am in like leadership groups, and
Hmm.
it's mostly inbound. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm interested because at some point, like referrals are super important, but at the end of the day, you want to grow your business maybe not by 20% or 30%, but maybe by 100% or more. And when you get into that category, do you focus on just getting more and more referrals and like asking those people to refer you to others, or like what's your strategy for growth in that regard?
You know, it just happens organically. And I
Okay.
like to say that we focus on our deliverable. We
Hmm.
don't say, hey, refer us out. I think it's just when you do good, you have other industry friends. They're going to be like, who's doing your content? How are you
Yeah,
converting? I'm seeing your ads all over TikTok. You guys must be spending a lot of money.
a lot of money. Yeah.
And the next question is, who are you working with? Stop
And then
right
and
here,
you pop
pointing
up
to it. Yeah,
and you point to it.
literally pointing to it.
So, okay, wanted to ask you a few more personal questions in that regard that I love asking my guests. What were your top three books that got you into business, and what are the top three books that made you stay in business?
My biggest book that I read was Start Something That Matters by Blake Mycoskie, the founder of Tom's. He spoke about giving back to others while being a business person. That's kind of what planted the seed for me
Hmm.
that, someday if I am fortunate to have a company and it works, I want to give back. And I kind of did that this past weekend, like last week in El Salvador. It just really reminded me of the Tom story and of why I started. And I'm really glad that you asked that because I haven't thought of it in that way, like what book started that trigger. But it was just the beginning. Um, so yeah, read that book if you want to make some great impact. Book number two is probably it's a book by like the guys at Pixar. I
Hmm.
don't remember the name, but it was like red cover talking about Ed Catmull, I believe, was featured, and the story of being creative because Pixar is all about making innovations of things that have never happened before, and
Hmm.
it's very fascinating to hear how someone can come up with a cartoon or whatever, and people love it. So I appreciate that book. And the last book's probably you've heard this a lot, the Shoe Dog, like Nike.
Yeah.
That guy was like, he grinded and he put the time in, and now you see like he's where he's at because of the work.
We had it actually on one of the previous podcasts in season one. We had Izzy Rosenzweig. He's like a genius in logistics, and he was like, "If you want to understand business and logistics, get the book. Like really read it and read it again and again. It's like the Bible for you in that regard." But what do you like reading now? Like, what are you focused on, or you don't really focus on reading that much nowadays?
I don't know. I have this bookshelf, but my books don't get touched. Uh, I think I'm trying to figure that out as well. I kind of
Hmm.
like the idea of interviewing people now, kind of like
Hmm.
you in learning. That's like a new way of reading because you can ask whatever you want, but you
Yeah.
can also inspire the people who are listening. And it's fun. It's fun to be a sponge and just genuinely be curious.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I'm just curious how you learn because you're obviously learning every single day. But like, what's your like way of learning? I personally have dyslexia. I really don't like reading because of that much. I listen to books, I listen to podcasts, but I'm very carefully listening when I'm speaking to someone who is doing something interesting. And I'm coming up with more ideas out of it. But for you, what is your way of doing it?
This talking to people, meeting up with them for a cup of coffee, asking them direct questions, finding people that you can trust to discuss anything and they don't just sugarcoat things, because when you're vulnerable and real, that's when the real conversation happens, and both sides are really benefiting. But if you're withholding certain information, which I understand, for
Yeah.
trust reasons, you've been
Yeah.
backstabbed. That's a whole nother ordeal of this journey that people don't talk about. Like, what is it like to get burned by people that you thought were once friends?
Hmm.
Just happens.
Do you want to talk about this? Do you want to share, like, how do you recover from something like this? Because I'm meeting so many people that are experiencing this, and honestly, when you search it online, nobody's talking about this. There's no formula in that regard.
Well, if you ever start in Los Angeles, you're gonna meet everybody who knows everybody and knows the LeBron James of the world through a cousin or whatever, and then you find out like they don't, and then they will lie about their case studies saying they work with the biggest producers, but when you go online, there's no track record. So the one thing I'll say is just focus on you. Don't worry about the pretenders. Don't waste your energy on them. Be really good at vetting people. If they don't seem like a good fit, drop them, leave them. Like, don't bother. And if you find good people that are genuine, just, spend time with them, like interact, put effort into it, call them, text them, just be like, hey, can I FaceTime? And that's how you build your tribe. So I would say just build a good tribe where you all support each other and you're all genuine with good intentions. Like my friends, for example, they flew to El Salvador because they trusted that it was going to be a great time. And that was, mind blowing to think, because if you fly to El Salvador, it's not easy. You're taking multiple flights, you're committed. And
Hmm.
that's, it was cool. I feel very,
And you took 20 people there.
yeah.
So that's just an example that your friends really trust you and what you do.
I guess so. Yeah, and we have FOMO from the friends who weren't able to make it this time around, because pictures, it builds for the
Yeah.
next event.
Yeah. Okay. Where do you see Sapphire Studios? How do you plan Sapphire Studio to evolve and to grow? Like, where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years there? What's changing in 3 to 5 years?
3 to 5 years, I don't know. That's too far. I Let me ask you, what do you see in 3 to 5 years for yourself?
Oh, I
Spotlight's back
can.
at you.
I mean, I can see myself doing more ecom businesses. I can see myself growing my agency because I wanted to grow it into a whole academy where we really build real marketers, not just people that know how to run ads. I want to build like this knowledge base of people and just structure it in a way that I'm creating people that are in our industry. So I actually have a plan for 3 for 5 years and so on. They're probably going to change completely in 5 years, but yeah, it's something that is really like my mission in my company, because I don't want to just have a service based business where I'm like, hey, I'm one of the thousands and thousands of agencies that are running ads. Like, okay, we have young people that are amazing, and I take them maybe when they're 18, 19, 20, and I it's typically their first job ever. They have no experience, and in like 2 years they're like ready to run ads for hundreds of thousands every single month for their clients. And they help teams that have like people with 15 to 20 years of experience. And then there's like this girl that's like 22 and is consulting a whole team of experts. So that's where I want to get it.
Hmm.
That's my mission in my company.
Yeah. For me, I just live day by day. I don't know. Like, I don't know what's going to happen next week. Things, you always never know who you'll meet that can change your trajectory, or you never know what could happen in a negative way as well. So it's like, I just remain present focus, and I never think 3 to 5. It's like scary to me. Like, I'll be 33, 35. It's like, great. Like, here's what I wish. But, it's important to manifest, yes, but I don't put too much energy in that far out. I'm more of like,
Interesting.
let's plan this month. Let's plan end of the year, because it's 2 months.
You're the first guest that I have on the podcast with an answer like that, and I'm really curious because like you're super successful, and typically super successful people tell that they have a 15-year plan, not a 5 year, a 15-year plan. And that's interesting. Like, how do you actually motivate your team to work with you? Like, what do you bring to the table that they love about you, and what's really important for them?
You gotta ask them. I don't know. I'm kidding. But I don't know. I always talk about them. I don't really like talking about myself, right? I'm always thinking like, what's a win-win for the team as a whole?
Mm-hmm.
And I actually I don't know. Like I just don't like throwing these words and being like, oh, he's this, this, and this. It's like it's weird for me to think of it like that.
Great. Well, since we have 7 and 8 figure e-com store owners that are watching this, what would you tell them to really focus on if they want to be successful when they're advertising in 2024? That's not too far away. It's like almost a few days
Sure.
into it. So, what do we do in 2024 to be successful with our e-com stores?
Capitalize on what worked in Q4. I mean, Q4 is the go time. See what didn't work, learn from it. What worked, innovate, and focus on investing more time and efforts into those areas. Yeah, and also have good intentions and make sure to give to others as well. That's something that I would like to start the trend to encourage more business owners to do, and being more transparent about it. What are they doing to serve the people who need it most? It's not just let's
Mhm.
make a bunch of money and like whatever. It's important to think of that and inspire other people to follow along the path of giving.
What would you do in that regard? How will you inspire them? What are you taking as action? Because I can see you're super passionate about this.
Yeah, I do it. I tell people. I'll email clients and be like, "Look, this is what I'm doing." Some people think, "Oh, it doesn't tie into business or like whatever," but I think this speaks to my heart and where I stand. And if it's meant to be, like, who's gonna get mad at you for helping others, right? Like, I'll send them my donation links. I'll be like, "Hey, I'm doing this." Like for my trip, I raised $10,000 from my friends and you know that I know and brand
Mhm.
owners. But people don't know it took me like 250 emails that I sent out, and it was only
250 emails.
yeah from people I know in my circle,
Yeah.
and I don't expect people to donate. Don't get that out there like, hey, I'm just reaching out for donations. I just want
Mhm.
awareness of
Yeah.
just know what I'm doing. If you contribute, great, but it's okay to have a total failure and not raise any money as well.
Well, I'm actually a little bit surprised. I'm coming from a country that is not so rich, but something that I'm really proud of is that at the end of the day, the people are, most of the people, let's say, are very cautious and really like helping each other out. And when there's a situation where people need donations, maybe it's for a medical bill, maybe it's for something else, they always gather around, and even if they don't have money, they find it so that they can actually help. So that's why when you, well, prior to our conversation on the podcast, when you told me about this, I was like, this is something that's really worth sharing, because I think that in our industry, we talk lots about our success by how much money we made, by what type of car we drive, by how much money our stores made yesterday, and nothing about the others. And what I want to really wish you is to really continue all of this, because that's setting an example that everyone needs to hear and listen to. Um, because just because me or you are very fortunate to be in a situation where we can do all of this, that doesn't mean that others are in that situation. And if you can help out and create the next Thomas Ma, or the next Victor, or the next other person that's going to be successful because of your actions and your inspiration, that means a lot. And if you can then turn the other Thomas Mas that are making great money and great businesses, if you can make them also believe in this, that's going to make a real change.
Yeah, that's my goal, and that's why now I may create with Tom on Instagram, TikTok. I just want to share more light on how to do things and make a better impact as we grow.
I can only say that I didn't expect to have a conversation where we focus so much on the other aspects of our businesses, but I really want to thank you for this. And the last thing that I want to ask you is, how can people reach out to you? Where can they follow your stories and what you do? How are you going to do that?
Just Instagram, create with Tom, or LinkedIn, create with Tom, my name. It's there. Yeah, that's how.
So, everyone that's just listening to our podcast or watching this podcast right now, definitely go and follow Tom and everything that he's doing right now. And if you're an e-com store owner, if you're a business guy and you're thinking about doing all of this, reach out to any one of us and let's connect. Let's talk about it and let's make the most, not just out of our businesses, but for others as well. That's our message from the second episode of the Markademic of Two Ecomm Experts on Markademics podcast. Thomas, really thank you for all of this. And I hope that this episode will reach the right people and they will take the right actions.
Appreciate you for having me and looking forward to seeing how this turns out.
Thank you.